We are living through an in-between moment. Technology is moving faster than jobs. AI is advancing faster than wages. Foreign investments are creating much fewer jobs than before. Economic growth is not always translating into worker confidence. Workers tell us this very plainly. They worry about job security. They worry about cost of living. They worry about whether the next disruption will be theirs. If we ask workers to work hard, upgrade, adapt, we must also ask the economy to deliver real outcomes for them. When workers do everything right but still feel left behind, the problem is not their effort, it is the system. This is why in this budget, I will speak for 5 groups of workers. I call them the 5 U's: the unemployed, the underemployed, the underrepresented, the untrained, and the underserved. My first U worker group is the unemployed, specifically the involuntarily unemployed. To be candid, last year we saw many retrenchments and many bad retrenchments as well. Employers who do not abide by the tripartite advisory on managing excess manpower and responsible retrenchment made headlines. Each time, NTUC and our union stepped in, fought for members and workers, including securing payouts, and escalated the issue to the Ministry of Manpower. Drivers of retrenchments like business restructuring and uncertainties will persist this year. NTUC and unions stand ready to support impacted workers, including professionals, managers, and executives, who may not be covered under collective agreements. I ask the government to give NTUC and unions more time, strength, and information to do so. First, introducing advanced mandatory retrenchment notifications to unions and the government can provide more timely and early intervention. Currently, employers with at least 10 employees are required to notify MOM within 5 working days after notifying employees. The government can consider all MRNs to be made prior to retrenchments. I say again, prior to retrenchments. Second, there should be stronger penalties for employers who do not comply with this requirement, and not just a slap on the wrist. Third, the government can consider sharing information with NTUC and unions on sectors and companies that might be disrupted due to economic restructuring, including expected scale of impact and timeline, past retrenchment incidents, and past retrenchment benefit levels. I am heartened that after a decade of lobbying, involuntarily unemployed workers facing temporary financial strain can now benefit from transitional support for up to 6 months while they undergo training or looking for better-fitting jobs through the Skills Future Job Seeker Support Scheme. According to NTUC's most recent survey on economic sentiments, about 40% of almost 1,000 workers expressed concerns about losing their jobs. In fact, from April to August last year, MOM also shared that 60% of the 7,200 GSS applications received were rejected, of which one of the top 3 reasons for unsuccessful applications was exceeding the income threshold of $5,000 per month. I therefore opine that more can be done to support the broad middle of involuntarily unemployed workers. The government can consider raising the income threshold from $5,000 to $7,600 to better cover PMEs. By easing financial pressures, GSS helps workers avoid rushing to poor job matches that lead to underemployment. Sir, this brings me to my second U worker group, the underemployed, which can be broadly defined as those who are underutilized in the workforce in terms of availability, qualifications, skills, or experience. Time-related underemployment, such as when an individual who has the capacity to work a full-time position works part-time, is measured by MOM and widely studied. However, non-time-related underemployment, such as when a highly qualified, skilled, or experienced expert holds a junior-level position, is more difficult to determine. This is why NTUC has collaborated with the Singapore University of Technology and Design to study this issue since 2023. There is also voluntary and involuntary underemployment. Voluntary underemployment, where workers opt to work fewer hours or in a less demanding role to pursue better work-life balance, personal interests, or less stressful career, can represent diverse aspirations and values. It is the involuntary underemployed group that warrants our attention. These are workers who stay in contract or gig work because they cannot secure a full-time position. They are also overqualified workers who seek to move up the career but are stuck in junior-level positions and pay. Over time, underemployed workers can become trapped in the vicious cycle of low-paid and insecure work, limiting opportunities for upward mobility. Women and caregivers, in particular, are at a higher risk of underemployment and consequently unequal pay as they take more time out of the workforce and seek flexible work arrangements to balance caregiving commitments. I therefore submit that the government broadens its definition of underemployment and collaborate closely with our tripartite partners to monitor this issue and maximize the productivity and earning potential of every worker, especially after NTUC and SUTD's underemployment study findings are released in the coming months. Fixed-term contract workers are one group acutely vulnerable to job insecurity. The government can encourage employers to place fixed-term contract workers into permanent roles after 2 cycles of contract renewals and regard successive contracts renewed within 2 months of the previous contract as continuous service, instead of the current 1-month window stipulated in the tripartite advisory on the employment of term contract employees. Another group vulnerable to involuntary underemployment that has been concerning of late is young workers and fresh graduates. According to the most recent graduate employment surveys from autonomous universities, private education institutions, and polytechnics, fewer graduates secured permanent full-time positions within 6 months of graduation across the board, even as starting salaries continue to rise. While this is in part due to the younger generation's propensity to explore diverse and flexible career paths, many also face external challenges like the shrinking of entry-level roles, accelerated by AI and increasing saturation of diploma and degree holders. Earlier this month, NTUC hosted a dialogue with students at the SMU on the subject. I was there as well. Students spoke frankly about sending dozens, even hundreds of job applications without even a single reply. Even internship stacking may not be deemed as sufficient, as employers increasingly prefer to hire applicants with at least minimum 1 to 2 years of full-time work experience. Early career professionals impacted by retrenchments are also met with stiff competition as job hugging or resignation rates hit a historic 20-year low. Labour market transitions can eliminate existing opportunities but also yield new ones, such as new sectors and more flexible or meaningful forms of work. For example, Singapore is constantly ranked as one of the most AI-exposed countries in the world, but also one of the most AI-ready. Young people will need to know how to reach these new opportunities, and our institutions must be equipped to support them. The government launched the Graduate Industry Traineeships GRID program last year to absorb recruitment and training risk for employers while helping fresh graduates gain industry experience and relevant skills. This is a good start. To avoid skills jobs mismatches or youths getting stuck in gig, contract, or part-time work after long and unfruitful job searches, more concerted effort must be made to invest in human capital and skills. Broaden the range of good jobs with good prospects and growing local companies and startups, many of which are aligned with recommendations outlined by the Economic Strategic Review. The government can consider launching an extended and higher value iteration of GRID in high growth and high demand sectors with opportunities ranging from 1 to 2 years and with monthly traineeship allowances on par with starting salaries. Host organizations must convert trainees into permanent full-time employees unless a valid reason and supporting evidence are submitted. The government can also set aside more resources to groom early career professionals by sending them for overseas work postings, which is opportune as a market readiness assistance grant and a host of other schemes are enhanced to support local companies to internationalize. EDB recently announced a 20-year low number of jobs expected to be created, despite attracting more investments. This is a global problem in the age of automation and AI, but in Singapore, we cannot accept an economic model where growth advances while workers are left behind. Structured career pathways and raised wages should continue to be encouraged in traditionally undervalued fields with unmet demand like the skilled trades, education, and care services. My third U worker group is the underrepresented, referring to local professionals, managers, and executives, PMEs for short, who make up about almost half of the workforce, and disproportionately impacted by economic restructuring and technological disruptions, but who may lack representation and protection benefits. Lower income PMEs, sometimes disguised, for example, are not covered under Part 4 of the Employment Act, which provides for rest days, hours of work, and overtime pay. I therefore call on the government to increase the Employment Act Part 4 income thresholds, something that I raised in this House before, for non-workmen to at least $3,000, which will better reflect today's workforce demographics and help curb overworking norms. To ensure protections in the Employment Act keep pace with wage growth and workforce changes, the government can commit to reviewing the Employment Act every 5 years or when salaries reach a particular threshold, with a midterm review of income thresholds to ensure legislation does not lack economic shifts. The government can also consider reviewing the Industrial Relations Act, which stipulates that PMEs cannot be represented by unions if they are in senior management and executives with duties involving hiring, firing, or confidential information that present a conflict of interest. I suggest there be greater clarity about exclusions other than what is provided in the tripartite guidelines, as there are employers and human resource professionals who are still riding on this exclusion to disallow unions to extend their scope of representation, especially for purposes of collective bargaining. Currently, rank and file unions can represent eligible executives on a limited individual basis for specific industrial matters, including retrenchment benefits, dismissal, breach of individual contract, victimization, and re-employment disputes. I ask that the government broaden the scope to also include grievance handling. For over a decade, I've advocated for a compendium of measures to level the playing field and strengthen the Singaporean core for local PMEs, including legislation against errant employers who discriminate against Singaporeans, a foreign PME dependency ratio, stricter employment pass application conditions, and many others. Yet local PMEs, especially those working in multinationals, tell me that they still sometimes feel underrepresented in numbers and rank at their workplaces. We can say time and again that this is not a zero-sum game, but when MNCs retrench equally knowledgeable, skilled, and experienced local PMEs to retain cheaper foreign manpower, or when local PMEs are disproportionately underrepresented in senior and leadership positions and paid less, it can feel like this. To be clear, foreign PMEs remain essential to complement Singapore's workforce. They fill critical skills and labour gaps, bring global expertise and networks, and help keep companies growing rather than relocating. Many are friends and neighbours in our communities. The key is to create policy that encourages foreign PMEs to complement rather than displace the local workforce, encourage skills transfer and local foreign integration, and position local PMEs for senior and leadership positions, as well as high-paying and higher-value jobs. I therefore welcome the government's decision to raise the qualifying salaries for EP and S-Pass holders, to maintain the quality of EP and S-Pass holders as wages rise. But government also needs to watch for parity of Singaporeans who do the same work and are paid similarly and work alongside some of these S-Pass and EP holders. I also continue to call on the government to monitor, previously coined as the triple week companies and sectors, and encourage them to improve their workforce profiles by removing preferential tax or not awarding public sector contracts for recalcitrant companies. The government can also consider awarding bonus points under the Complementarity Assessment Framework, COMPASS for short, based on the proportion of Singaporeans in management positions. My fourth U worker group is the untrained. Unlike other countries where unions often must lobby for uneven training and upskilling opportunities, Singapore continuously doles out funding and promotes CET as a national priority. Today, we enjoy a wide range of causes and schemes like Skills Future credits to improve accessibility. However, there remains a minority of workers who have not accessed these resources we can work to reach. During Skills Future's 10th anniversary last year, I suggested to consolidate efforts and streamline offerings across different arms of the CT ecosystem, including NTUC's E2I, WSG, SSG, training providers, and the various institutes of higher learning to control quality and prevent overlap. I'm glad that the government considered the recommendation and created now, or are going to create now, a one-stop shop agency for skills training, career guidance, and job matching services by merging WSG and SSG. A next step could be enhancing career conversion programs to cover even more sectors and increase offerings. As the transition to an AI-driven economy approaches, NTUC has launched its AI Ready Singapore initiative to strengthen workers' long-term employability through learning, applying AI skills to daily work. NTUC will roll out AI training pathways and subsidize up to 50% of subscription costs of eligible AI tools for members for an initial period of 2 years, notwithstanding a tripartite standard on ethical and non-discriminatory use of AI in recruitment, performance, promotion, and termination can boost the AI readiness of Singapore's workforce. The government can also encourage employers to partner unions to start upskilling and or redeploying impacted staff early on. Together, we will move AI literacy to AI fluency for every worker, every department, every company, and every industry so that no worker is left behind. My fifth and final U worker group is the underserved, referring to persons with disabilities and ex-offenders. The uplifting employment credit for ex-offenders and the enabling employment credit for persons with disabilities, which provide employers with wage offsets to enhance employment support for disconnected individuals and widen our labour pool, are commendable initiatives. I hope that the government continues to embed inclusive hiring into mainstream workforce policy to unlock underutilised potential and ensure all workers can contribute fully and justly, as well as to boost the employment and employability of ex-offenders and persons with disabilities. I note that the UEC scheme ended on December 2025, and I ask that an extension be considered. I contend that diversity, equity, and inclusion in workplaces should not be a compliance obligation, but treated as workforce infrastructure. This means equipping managers and HR with the skills to productively operate a team with different needs, entrenching flexible work arrangements as a norm, and avoiding cliff effects in policy support. A person with disabilities and ex-offenders are more likely to be concentrated in lower wage and lower skilled jobs and sectors that have higher rates of unemployment and or underemployment. And a more concerted effort can also be made to prevent reproducing inequalities for these two groups. Sir, in conclusion, in this era of AI, aging, and global uncertainty, Singaporeans are not asking for guarantees. They are asking for fairness, they are asking for opportunity, they are asking that effort be rewarded. That is why this budget must work for the 5 U's: the unemployed, the underemployed, the underrepresented, the untrained, and the underserved. In a time of transition, we will only succeed if you and me move forward in unity. Mr. Speaker, sir, I support the budget. Thank you.
Mr. Singh, you have a clarification to make?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I refer to the point made by the Honourable Member on advance retrenchment notifications. The intention to pursue this point was made by NTUC before the budget debate. Shortly thereafter, the CEO of the Singapore National Employers Federation wrote to the Straits Times to share that they, I think the words were, they have strong reservations about this call. Can I ask the member, in view of the tripartite framework, has there been agreement with an SNEF on this particular point?
Mr. Teh?
We are in the midst of tripartite negotiations on this point, as we have formed a tripartite work group on the review of the Employment Act, of which I am a member. And we are looking at this carefully to balance the interests of the respective tripartite partners. But what I've shared earlier is our NTUC standpoint. Both Sec Gen and myself have shared earlier. Thank you.